My sister fed her dog a $200 steak while my 6-year-old son sat 2 tables away holding a cold bread roll. That's not a metaphor. That literally happened. The dog, a Pomeranian named Bella, got prime cut filet slipped under the table in a designer carrier. My son Noah, in his best little blue button-down shirt, the one he wore because it made him feel like a grown-up, got the free bread basket shoved at him like that was supposed to fix something. And the worst part? I almost let it go. I almost smiled, said thank you, and fed my son bread while everyone else ate lobster tails and ordered vintage wine. Because that's what I had been trained to do. Smile. Be grateful. Don't make it weird. Don't embarrass the family. I had been doing that for 29 years. That night was the last time. Let me back up, because this story doesn't start at the yacht club. It starts with understanding exactly what kind of family I came from and what role I had been assigned before I was old enough to have a say. My name is Julia. I'm a single mom. My son Noah is 6 years old and he is the best thing in my life by a mile. My father Thomas spent 40 years in corporate law and wore that career like it was his entire personality. My mother Beverly is the kind of woman who plans a dinner party 6 months in advance and considers the seating chart a reflection of her values. Spoiler alert, it is. And then there's my sister Kayla. Kayla calls herself a lifestyle influencer. What she actually influences is my bank account balance, but we'll get to that. My father was retiring, and my mother had been planning this dinner for half a year. The venue was the Blue Water Terrace Club, the kind of place where the membership dues cost more than most people's cars and the menu doesn't have prices because if you have to ask, you probably shouldn't be there. I got dressed up. Noah wore his button down. We showed up ready to celebrate. And then I saw the seating chart. Main table, 6 seats. My parents at the head. Kayla and her latest boyfriend on one side. Uncle Arthur and his wife on the other. Full table. Beautiful centerpieces. Vintage wine already breathing. And then, a few feet away, tucked near the service entrance right next to the swinging kitchen doors, a small round table. Set for 2. Me and Noah. I told myself it was logistics. I told myself the main table was full, it wasn't personal. I had been telling myself things like that for so long it had become automatic. I was good at making excuses for people who never made them for me. The food started arriving for the main table. Seafood towers. Oysters. Filet mignon. Lobster tails. Kayla had her phone out immediately, hovering over every plate, capturing the perfect angle of abundance, looking satisfied in that particular way she always does, like the world arranged itself specifically for her comfort. Noah sat quietly across from me, hands folded in his lap. He was wearing that blue shirt and had been so proud of it that morning, asking me if he looked like a grown-up. I told him yes, absolutely, very official. When the main courses landed at the big table and nothing came to ours, he looked up at me. His eyes weren't angry, just confused, trusting. Mom, he whispered, is our food coming soon? I'm really hungry. I waved a waiter down, kept my voice polite. Excuse me, I think you missed our table. My son and I would like to see a menu. The waiter's eyes went straight to my father, like he was checking for permission. I'm sorry, ma'am. The tasting menu was for the main table only. Your father said you weren't included in the headcount for dinner service. I stood up and walked over. My father was cutting into his steak. Didn't look up. Took his time chewing. Swallowed. Then finally looked at me with eyes that were flat and completely unbothered. It's a fixed price menu, Julia. $500 a head. We didn't think it was necessary to spend that on a 6-year-old who won't appreciate truffle oil. Besides, things are tight with the retirement transition. Things are tight. This man was wearing a $15,000 watch. They were eating food with actual gold flake on the desserts. Things were tight. Before I could respond, Kayla jumped in, mouth full of lobster, and grabbed the bread basket from the center of the table. Just give him some bread. He loves bread. Problem solved. And then, right under the table, I watched her slip a piece of prime steak down to Bella in the designer carrier at her feet. The dog got steak. My son got bread. I stood there holding that basket of cold rolls and something in me went completely still. Not explosive. Not loud. Just still. The kind of still that happens right before something permanent. I looked at Noah watching me with those trusting eyes, waiting for me to fix it. Then I looked at my family. My sister feeding a dog better than her nephew. My parents who had just told me my child wasn't worth a seat at their table. 29 years of being the good one. The reliable one. The one who showed up, cleaned up, helped out, and said yes when she meant no. And standing there in that yacht club holding a bread basket, I finally understood that none of it had ever been enough. It was never going to be enough. Because this was never about what I did or didn't do. This was just who they were. I smiled. Noted, I said. And I walked back to our table. I sat down and set the bread basket aside. Noah looked at me, worried. Mom, are you okay? I'm better than okay, baby. I'm awake. I raised my hand. Not a polite wave. Not a sorry to bother you gesture. I raised it like someone who was completely done asking permission. The waiter came over looking nervous, already glancing toward my father. I didn't whisper. I'd like to place an order. My voice carried. The neighboring tables heard it. My father's head turned. The waiter's pen hovered. I snapped my fingers lightly. Eyes on me, please. We're ordering a la carte, and we're putting it on the family member account. My father's chair scraped back. Julia, what do you think you're doing? I ignored him. For my son, Wagyu ribeye, medium rare, 14-ounce cut. Add the lobster tail. Truffle mac and cheese on the side. And for dessert, the chocolate soufflé. Large one. Silence at the main table. My mother's hand went to her pearls. Actually, genuinely, hand to pearls. Julia, that's a $200 steak. He's 6. I know, Mom. But since things are so tight, I figured I'd help out. I turned back to the waiter. Cancel the vintage Cabernet for the toast. Cancel the seafood tower refill. Cancel the dessert course for the main table. Everything that hasn't left the kitchen yet, cancel it. My father was on his feet now, face going a dangerous shade of red. You cannot do that. That is my account. Actually, Dad, I said, looking at him directly for the first time all evening, it's a family account. You added me as an authorized user 3 years ago to run your errands because you were too busy being important. You never removed me. So I can order whatever I want. And right now, I want my son to have a steak. And I want you to watch him eat it. Complete silence on the terrace. The bankers at the next table stopped talking. The couple by the railing stared openly. Kayla looked like she'd bitten into something sour. Uncle Arthur took a slow sip of water and hid a smile behind his glass. The waiter looked at my father. Then at me. He nodded once. Right away, ma'am. I sat back down and unfolded my napkin like nothing had happened. Noah looked at me with the widest eyes. Mom, is Grandpa mad? It doesn't matter, sweetheart. Tonight, we feast. When that Wagyu ribeye arrived at our little table by the kitchen door, placed in front of my 6-year-old with the presentation usually reserved for the most important guests in the room, I watched my family sit in stunned silence, their own food suddenly looking a lot less satisfying. The dynamic had shifted. Everyone at that table felt it. The drive home was quiet. Noah was asleep before we hit the highway, belly full of Wagyu and chocolate soufflé. I focused on the road, the streetlights, the sound of his breathing in the back seat. That sound, steady and peaceful, was the only thing I needed to hear right then. When I got home and carried him to bed, I sat at my kitchen counter with a glass of tap water and let the reality settle. My phone was going insane. Kayla, you are psychotic. You ruined Dad's night. Send me $500 for the cancellation fees or I'm telling everyone you had a mental breakdown. My mother, you are not the daughter I raised. You embarrassed us in front of the entire club. Fix this now. The third wasn't a text. It was a bank notification. My father had already removed me from the family account before the dessert plates were even cleared. I laughed. Dry and humorless in the empty kitchen. They thought this was about money. They thought revoking account access was a punishment. What they didn't understand was that I had never used that account for myself. Not once. They gave me access to run their errands. Cutting me off wasn't a punishment. It was a favor. I opened my laptop and created a new spreadsheet. I titled it, The Ransom. Because that's when it clicked. That's when I finally had a name for something I'd been feeling for years. I had been paying a ransom every transfer, every loan, every co-signature, trying to buy something that should have been free. I started typing. Every transaction. Every bailout. November 2021, rent assistance, $1,200. January 2022, car repair, $850. March 2022, emergency credit card payoff, $4,500. July 2022, failed jewelry line bailout, $3,000. The list went on. I pulled up bank statements, cross-referencing every date and amount until the final total appeared at the bottom of the screen. $18,500. I just stared at it. $18,500. A down payment on a house. A college fund for Noah. A full year of breathing room. Given away piece by piece, quietly, without complaint, while my family handed Kayla gifts and called her an investment. I opened my email. Subject, financial independence. To Kayla. CC, Mom, Dad, Uncle Arthur. Effective immediately, I am ceasing all financial support. The car loan I co-signed needs to be refinanced in Kayla's name within 30 days, or I will contact the lender directly. The credit card balance is due in full. I am no longer the family safety net. Do not contact me asking for money. I attached the spreadsheet. Attached the bank statements. Hit send. My phone lit up within 60 seconds. Kayla calling. Mom calling. Dad calling. I turned it off. I stood in Noah's doorway for a moment, watching him sleep, one arm wrapped around his stuffed lion, completely at peace with the world. Then I went to bed. For the first time in years, I didn't lie awake worrying about what my family thought of me. The days that followed were chaotic, but not in the way I expected. Kayla went on Instagram Live crying about how I had abandoned her during a mental health crisis, conveniently leaving out the part where she fed her dog a steak while her nephew held a dinner roll. Her followers flooded the comments with support. I didn't watch any of it. My mother left voicemails swinging between weeping and cold threats about disinheritance, sometimes in the same message. My father sent legal-sounding emails demanding I pay for emotional damages from my public outburst. I forwarded everything to Uncle Arthur. Uncle Arthur was a retired judge, fair, sharp, and completely allergic to the social climbing game my father had spent his career playing. He'd always been the black sheep because he refused to pretend money equaled character. My father had spent years dismissing him. Uncle Arthur had spent those same years watching everything, saying little, and remembering all of it. When I called him the morning after the dinner, he listened without interrupting. When I sent the spreadsheet, he called back in 10 minutes. "Julia," he said, voice serious. "This isn't just bad parenting. This is financial abuse. Possibly fraud." We met at his home office. He reviewed every document, every transfer, every bank statement. "You co-signed the car loan?" he asked. Dad said it would help her build credit. "And the credit card transfer?" Mom said Kayla's purse was stolen in Santorini. One-time emergency. Uncle Arthur looked up. Her purse wasn't stolen. I saw the photos. She bought a new one. He helped me draft formal demand letters. Legal letterhead, precise language, no emotion. Full repayment of $18,500 within 30 days or we'd file a civil suit. We notified them I was removing myself as co-signer on the car loan. Copies went to their family attorney. But the real work was the full separation. Every account, every shared subscription, every password, changed. I pulled my credit reports. Froze my credit. Building a wall around me and Noah, brick by brick, and it felt like the most productive thing I'd done in years. And then I found the ledger. My father had used my house as overflow storage for years. Boxes of old files he said were important but apparently not important enough to keep at his own place. I had never questioned it. Another thing I just accepted without asking why. I was clearing those boxes when I found it at the bottom of one labeled 2005 to 2010, household. A brown accounting ledger. I opened it expecting old business expenses. I found my name on the first page. Julia, braces, $4,500. Julia, piano lessons, $1,200. Julia, prom dress, $300. Julia, college tuition, semester 1, $12,000. Every dollar my parents had ever spent on me, listed under a column that read, debt to be repaid. My hands were shaking before I turned the second page. Julia, medical deductible, broken arm, $500. Julia, school field trip, $40. A $40 field trip. In the debt column. I turned to Kayla's section. Kayla, Dance Academy. Investment. Kayla, modeling portfolio. Gift. Kayla, car. Gift. Kayla, Europe trip. Gift. No debt column. Not one entry. Everything spent on Kayla was a gift or an investment. Everything spent on me was a debt waiting to be collected. I sat on the cold concrete floor of my garage for a long time. This wasn't a feeling. This wasn't me being sensitive. This was a policy written down, in ink, in an accounting book. My father had formally decided I was a financial liability and Kayla was an asset. Before I was old enough to understand what was happening to me. They hadn't just loved her more. They had decided I owed them for existing. I photographed every page. Then I took the ledger to Uncle Arthur. He didn't speak when he opened it. He read through several pages, took his glasses off, and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Thomas always was a bean counter, he said quietly. But this is pathological. Can I use it? Oh, yes. He looked up. Not in a courtroom, in court this is just sad. But in the court of family reputation, among every relative who's been told you're the dramatic one? He closed the ledger. This is a nuclear bomb. We didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, on a Saturday morning, Noah was watching cartoons when I heard a car in the driveway. My father's Mercedes. That old familiar tightness moved through my chest, the trained response I'd carried my whole life. Brace yourself. Manage them. Don't set them off. Then I remembered the ledger. I opened the door but didn't step back to let them in. My mother looked frazzled, hair not quite right, composure slipping. My father looked angry, but underneath it, something I had never seen before. Fear. We need to talk, Julia. This legal nonsense has to stop. You're tearing this family apart. I'm balancing the books, Dad. Isn't that what you taught me? My mother cut in fast. We need you to sign a document. The bank needs a co-signature for refinancing on the house. We're doing some restructuring. Restructuring. The word people use when they don't want to say they're in trouble. They needed my credit score. My income verification. The ATM they thought they'd shut off to spit out one last receipt. No. My father's voice hardened. It's just a signature. It doesn't cost you anything. It costs me my future. And I'm done paying for yours. I reached back to the entry table and held out the photocopy of the ledger I'd left there specifically for this moment. My mother took it. I watched her eyes scan the page. Watched the exact second she recognized what she was looking at. My father looked over her shoulder and went pale. This man had stood in courtrooms for 40 years. He did not go pale. That was just record keeping, he said, voice losing its edge. I never intended to collect. You've been collecting for 29 years. My time, my energy, my money, my self-worth. The debt is settled. I already sent copies to Uncle Arthur, Aunt Carol, and the cousins. Everyone has seen it. My mother's voice dropped to a whisper. You wouldn't. I already did. I pointed at the driveway. Get off my property. Don't come back without a check for $18,500. They stood there for a moment. And for the first time in my life, I saw them clearly, not as giants, not as authority figures I'd built my whole nervous system around. Just two small, aging people who had built their lives on a lie and were watching it fall apart. They turned and walked back to the car. They looked old. They looked tired. And honestly, they looked exactly like what they were, people who had run out of road. I closed the door. Locked the deadbolt. Leaned my forehead against the wood and listened to their engine disappear. Noah wandered in holding his stuffed lion. Mom, who was that? I picked him up and held him close. Nobody, baby. Just some people who used to know us. Are they coming back? No, I said. They're not. The fallout was quiet, but absolute. The ledger did what Uncle Arthur said it would. Relatives who had urged me for years to keep the peace, to be patient, once they saw the debt column next to the gift column, Julia next to Kayla, in black and white, there was nothing left to argue. My parents were isolated. Not because of drama. Because of truth. Kayla had to sell her car and move into a smaller apartment. She blocked me everywhere. I considered that a gift. Uncle Arthur helped me negotiate a settlement. My parents paid a lump sum to avoid a civil suit, not the full $18,500, but $12,000. I didn't spend it on anything that felt good in the moment. I opened an investment account in Noah's name and called it the Clean Slate Fund. Every month after that, the money that used to disappear into Kayla's rent, her credit cards, her emergencies, I put it in there instead. Watched the number grow. It wasn't a fortune, but it was real. It was ours. A promise to my son that he would never have to buy his way into his own family. That he would never have to pay a ransom for love. A few weeks after everything settled, I was on my back porch in the evening. Noah was in the yard chasing fireflies, actually running, laughing, completely absorbed. The air was cool. My phone was quiet. People talk about revenge like it's this big dramatic moment. It wasn't like that. It felt like putting down something heavy you'd been carrying so long you forgot it wasn't supposed to be yours. I watched Noah catch one. He cupped it in both hands, looked at it for a second with complete wonder, then opened his hands and let it go. That's exactly what it felt like. I wasn't angry. I wasn't waiting for an apology that was never coming. I was just sitting in my backyard watching my son be a kid, and the silence where all their demands used to be felt like the best thing I had ever heard. The ransom was paid. The hostage was free. And the future was entirely ours. Thanks for listening. If this story hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear that walking away is an option, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about people who finally stopped shrinking themselves to fit into spaces that were never meant for them. You cannot buy what was never for sale, but you can stop paying for it.